Here we go, kids. "3D Politics" every Monday night right here on Facebook Live. That's right, kiddies. Tommy McKay, your fine host. Bringing in David Van from SoonerPolitics.org and also David Oldham from ConstitutionalGrounds.com. And there we are all together again, once again, for 3D Politics Live tonight. Exciting news. G.T. Bynum, the legacy continues. Tulsa World Magazine's 2020 Tulsans of the Year. And by golly, we're going to move through that as quickly and as politely as we possibly can. At the same time, thanks for being back. We're also going to get into the meat of a story about Justice Alito demands briefs in Pennsylvania on a lawsuit to flip the election. That's from lawandcrime.com. And also approximately 7:30 this evening, bottom of the hour, Tim Harper, the Second Amendment auditor. Case dismissed. We're going to be talking to him at the bottom of the hour. Gentlemen, how you been before we launch?
Good. I'm doing fine now. I don't know how I'll be doing in the presence of a real man like Tim Harper, though. He's a man's man.
So I'd like to talk about it. But real quickly, because time is going to be short before we hit the meat on this thing, Tulsa World Magazine's 2020 Tulsans of the Year, G.T. Bynum, is leading the city in unprecedented times. A story by Tim Stanley, December 5th from Tulsa World. Tim Stanley, unprecedented times is how he leads, but not unprecedented ways. In a year that's seen Tulsa face some of its most pressing challenges to date. Mayor G.T. Bynum has not shied away from the demands of leadership. It started with a search he initiated to finally answer the lingering questions about possible mass graves from the 1921 race riot. You remember how that was like a main thing we had to figure out? And Vision 2025 is what I remember he ran on. He's raising our taxes coming up this summer in 2021. But my real secret, I think those bones are buried beneath the gathering place. We're going to have to dig up the gathering place. Everything's hidden below the gathering place.
You heard it here first, Tulsa, you Oklahoma.
So amazing.
Well, it's not like they're using it for other things, right? Actually, we were out there the other day, and it was filled with people, almost none of whom were actually socially distancing or wearing masks. So,
well, that's the dirty little secret, that all those coffins are buried beneath the gathering place.
And let me say this, Tom, have you heard anything about these mass graves? I think we've all of a sudden had silence on it.
Now this is
because they haven't been able to find anything, actually.
Just 2 days ago,
very little.
This propaganda minister for G.T. Bynum, Tim Stanley, writes, the search, which is ongoing, has so far yielded an unmarked site containing 10 coffins. It remains to be determined if the massacre related. We don't know if these coffins are even massacre related, but it's an important next step, the mayor said. Now, how in the world could it be that it's an important next step if you're not even sure if an unmarked site is part of the massacre? Further, also,
they could be buried up in Veneta. At the Eastern State Hospital, they have a graveyard there with most of the markers not even present anymore.
My suggestion, as we've talked about before, is that if the bodies are in coffins, that's not what you call a mass grave.
Right.
Because that's not really what we're...
If you're going to bury them in a hurry, and really, if you're going to disrespect them, do you really think you're going to build a pine box for each one?
Well, the thing is that they were going to death records. They were going to mortuary records to find these things. Right. So these people were taken to mortuaries and so forth, if that's the case. You don't have the typical, like Tom is pointing out, the typical mass grave, the massacre mass grave, just dig a trench with a bulldozer and bury them all.
Yeah.
I don't know that happened. I mean, that's the supposed thing, but I haven't the
I'm
evidence.
not trying to downplay a massacre. What I'm saying is
No.
a mass grave, when you have bodies in coffins, that indicates a proper burial, not some sort of piled dead bodies into a hole.
Oh yeah, this is not Serbia, you know. And the thing is, Serbia, how long were they able to keep that a secret? Less than 5 years. Even the World War II, it was less
This
than
wasn't
5
a secret,
years.
but was part of what they did secret. In other
Now,
words,
guys, we are going to run.
but
So,
anyway. So
imagine this. Imagine me trying to rush through a critique of GT and not hurt him too. But the propaganda minister, Tim Stanley, goes on. Remember, the first best thing in the COVID-ridden 2020 the GT did, according to the propaganda minister, is searching for graves. That's the number one thing. So then there's Bynum's part in the Tulsa's COVID-19 pandemic response. From the moment Oklahoma's first positive test was identified in Tulsa, the mayor has been engaged, including through some unprecedented direct actions. Tulsa mayors would not normally intervene in public health emergency, Bynum said, but I knew we were living on borrowed time. Bum, bum, bum. Holy mackerel. Have you ever heard so much hyperbole for a 0.02% death rate? Borrowed time. What that means is the crisis was going to run out of time if we didn't hurry up and take advantage of this borrowed time, like the money from the plebiscites. Hearing from fellow mayors, and now here's how he is. He's a populist really at heart after being a fascist. Hearing from fellow mayors in the coastal cities about how their outbreaks were overwhelming their healthcare systems. Well, we're not living free anymore. We're not living free anymore. Now, the main thing is that GT Bynum is getting a heads up from other mayors somewhere else on coastal cities that their healthcare systems are being overwhelmed. So all of a sudden, GT realizes that the healthcare system is more important than freedom itself. Bynum decided early on to invoke his mayoral powers. What the hell?
Really? Tell me about these powers.
Starting by restricting the size of gatherings, he went on to shut down bars and dine-in restaurants across the city and issue a stay-at-home order for residents. Now, this is being brought to us by the Tulsa World Magazine's Tulsa of the Year propaganda minister, Tim Stanley, for GT Bynum. And you know what the G stands for? Greg Robinson.
Of course.
So, quick and timely action. Back to the article. Quick and timely action made the difference, he said. Bynum said, we acted early and thankfully Tulsans understood, and we were able to save our local healthcare system from the initial wave.
Really?
So he claimed, yeah, really. Really.
They always claim something improvable.
Tom, you know that super spreader we had last June at the BOK Center?
Yeah.
It failed to spread. It just didn't happen, you know?
Yeah.
We didn't have anything, you know, because they say 2 weeks, right? Within a 2-week window of it, you know, you should see the results of it. And now 3 weeks later, yeah, it started to elevate up. But that 2-week window, it didn't happen, folks. Didn't happen.
I think we've got a stupid spreader going on. So because the pandemic is still ongoing, it's hard to have much perspective. Remember, he just said Tulsans understood and we were able to save our local healthcare system from the initial wave, claiming we had success. But then he goes on, because the pandemic is still ongoing, it's hard to have much perspective on it currently, Bynum said. But in time, he said he believes people will be able to look back and see this for what it really was. One of the largest humanitarian initiatives in human history.
Yep.
I mean, this is hyperbole at the highest rate. Bynum Adam, it's incredibly moving to him that the people who sacrifice their own livelihoods, their own freedom of movement, schools closing, churches holding parking lot services, all to help protect our neighbors and ourselves. First of all, let's recall earlier in the article, it said that there was a starting by restricting gatherings. Remember, Bynum decided to invoke his powers. Now he's saying people who sacrifice their own livelihoods, hell, he shut them down. What do you mean they sacrifice nothing? He
Thank you.
shut them down. What's he thanking them for? Okay. And to help our neighbors from ourselves. How twisted in a pretzel can you be? Climate change is redundant. Okay. They are both the same thing. Neighbors are ourselves. Okay. To protect ourselves from ourselves. Is that the way it works? But time for reflection will come later, said the little general. For now, there's still work to be done. However, long measures, I want to know what that means. Long measures. What the sheesh? Long measures must be taken or kept in place. One or the other. Put your foot down, little general. Either long measures must be taken or kept in place, such as the mask mandate that Bynum also spearheaded. He said he believes Tulsans will continue to do what's needed. We talk a lot about Tulsa being a generous city in a general or historic sense about very wealthy people bestowing something on the community. But this response has been everyday people making profound personal sacrifices out of love for their neighbors. That is extraordinary. Now, if you just dice that up, and then I'm done, it is everyday people that are personal sacrifice, but that's extraordinary. But he just told us extraordinary was the wealthy people are somehow different than the everyday people. And so it's not extraordinary. It would be ordinary that everyday people give. It's extraordinary when his philanthropist friends come along and bestow something on the community, which could be like a mess. Oh my God, you got that on my community. It's like your charity, your eleemosynary philanthropic expenditures give me zero political representation. Gentlemen, that's my GT Bynum Tim Stanley bit for the evening. Now, let's get on to the business about landandcrime.com. Alito demands briefs. And now listen.
Hey, you know what? We got Tim Harper actually ready to come in.
Let's bring him in.
And before we bring Tim in, I did want to just add one quick thing to your rant. It was awesome.
Please do.
and I mean, you notice that they do this all the time to little dictators. And the littler and the dweebier, the better, the more that they want to, prop them up as such great people. And so that's what we have here. I did want to share this. Let me get into this thing. And that is, there we go. Let me share this. Everybody can go to ipetitions.com/petition/stop Tulsa lockdowns. Okay. And add your name to the petition. It is Oklahoma citizens who are looking to have sign it. But if you do business, if you're our number one fan and you're in Arkansas and you come over this way, or would come over this way except for the lockdown, go ahead and sign it. But the thing is that we do need to have this as one step. It is the weakest step I think we could possibly take, but it is constitutional that we can seek redress. And they have already tried to shut this down. They want this thing to go away. So we need more signatures.
Excellent.
And so I did want to point that out, but that he's the man of the year. He should be under criminal indictment for every business that has lost its business over his handling of COVID, because it's all been wrong. Yeah. So that's what my. No,
I appreciate you. Hey, I appreciate you continuing that rant and sharing that information, because I mean the dictator and the king have identical powers. The only difference is public opinion. One has moral authority and the other one we hate. So the fact is we are living under dictatorial rule, and it's only public opinion that is going to switch it. So let me set this up as we bring Timothy Harper in case. This is from KFOR TV and K Query, posted December 4th. Case against Second Amendment auditor dismissed. Oklahoma City KFOR, a year after being arrested by Oklahoma City police, charges have been dismissed against self-proclaimed Second Amendment auditor. You notice how they slam the I am. I think I said to no one there, I believe is how that song goes. Timothy Harper has posted videos of himself openly carrying firearms into private businesses and on public property.
That's right.
And in April of 2019, Edmond police officers were called to Harper Park, where witnesses became concerned about a man carrying a gun. Let's bring in now Timothy Harper.
Hello, can you hear me?
Oh, barely.
Oh, yeah, I barely hear you. Let's bring you in and up. Now tell me, are we only on audio tonight?
Okay, let me switch over to my handset. Are you hearing me now?
I can
That's
hear
we
you.
good.
hear you.
I'd love to see your
Okay, yeah, I had to shut off the Bluetooth.
I was hoping we get video with you, Tim.
I was hoping to. I tried it on the Zoom app, but it didn't. It said to use. I got a message that said use the call in.
All right.
Let me see if I can bring this in.
Yeah. You're my new favorite auditor.
Okay.
Yeah, Cindy Bird bit the dust. I'm sorry. So,
We can let him get a chance there, see if we can bring him in.
yeah. Yeah. By the way, I want to tell everybody Sooner Politics is taking nominations for the next 2 weeks for our Oklahoma Sooner Politics Citizen of the Year. We'd like to hear, and I'm just going to say right out there, Tim, you're in the running on that just for the stand you've had to take. I tell you what, sometimes it's not very glamorous to do the kind of things that get you the kind of rewards that you deserve. We got a man in the screen.
There it is.
Yeah. All right.
Yeah. All right. Now we're muted though.
Ooh, he looks scary. John Brown.
You're muted, Tim.
Yep.
This is how the pros do it, by the way. I've been watching a lot of broadcast television all the way from the Senate to Jimmy Fallon.
Tim
And
can't hear you.
this is how they do it. Tim, you've got to mute. They say it's muted.
You gotta hit the mute, the
Ask to
unmute button. Can you do it from your end, Tom?
No, it has. I can ask him to unmute, which I've done. There it
There you
is.
go.
Yes.
See it?
Now we should be able to hear you.
Yeah, I apologize. It's I have to hold the phone up to my ear to hear it because it's not working through Bluetooth, and I'm on the road right now, so I will try to make it work.
Well, you might as well just go, well, yeah, you don't want to hop back and forth unless you can hear us. So you might as well just go with your name and the audio if we can't get the video. But let's talk about the most upcoming, the good news for you, Tim Harper. The case has been dismissed. This story is December 4th from KFOR, but when did you get the news?
I got the news on December 1st, probably about 5 in the afternoon. My attorney called me and told me that the DA was filing motions to dismiss it that day.
Nice. And
wow,
that created some happiness in your life after a year, right?
Very much so, yeah. Much relief. And we had been working towards this for months now. And slowly we were chipping away at the DA and getting him to realize that I wasn't what the news had made me out to be. And the DA started to realize, I believe, that he felt he was played in the character assassinations that the news and OCPD laid at his feet. And since he didn't know me, he took the bait. And henceforth was my high bond and my unconstitutional bail restrictions placed upon me just to get out of jail. And he realized that none of this should have happened.
No kidding. I mean, he painted you as a Tim McVeigh, you know?
Yes.
Or worse.
Yes, he did.
Apparently, though, it started with the egregious action when witnesses became concerned, though. So they were literally all the way to concerned, that you were there. I mean, it seems to me sometimes these guys come out and it becomes, we're going to, make you an example, I think is what they do. And we talked some time ago on our show, just maybe last week, about due process and the requirement for showing damages before the law kicks in. Oldham, do you see, is this the idea of, I mean, here we are a year down the road. I forget, Tim, how your guns, if you've got your property back, but first, Oldham, how about the due process on this?
Oh, the due process on this sucks.
Yeah, it does. Now,
from the arrested to begin with, Tim, they didn't have a warrant? What did you actually get arrested for?
I was arrested sitting at H&H gun store after I had made a purchase, and I had received a phone call earlier that day as somebody claiming to be a Daily Oklahoman reporter that wanted to meet with me and wanted to talk about my carry in the restaurant and clear things up, and wanted to just paint things in a different light, he said. And I told him, well, I'm tired of being painted wrongly in the news. This was before I was arrested, and they were already putting me on the news as you know, this guy is seen carrying AR-15s into restaurants, and it's scary, and, you know, so I was going to meet with them to change the narrative a little bit. And when I got there, I sat down and ate a hamburger because I got there a little bit early, and somebody walked up and asked me my name, and I said, yes, this is me. And before you know it, 3 officers stepped up and arrested me, put me in handcuffs, and took me out and put me in the police car. When I got down to I had just got off work, and so I didn't have any firearms on me at all. And they took me down to an investigator's unit down there downtown, brought me in there and sat me down to interview me. But at the same time they were arresting me, they were serving a warrant at my house to get the firearm that I carried into the restaurant. So they gave me 2 ultimatums. I can give them the key to my house. They'll drive it out there, open the door, and search for the gun, or they could kick the door in, you know, right now. So I gave them the key. They went there and searched my whole house and couldn't find the gun. So they never were able to prove that I had an actual firearm at the restaurant. All they had was pictures.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah, they got a good idea of everything in your house. So it's not funny, but I'm telling you, these guys rifle. As a kid, my dad our house got searched by the FBI. They turned every damn thing.
But I want to ask you, Tim, this is David Van of Sooner Politics. Didn't the great civil rights leader, Representative Jason Lowe, come to your defense on this?
He did the opposite. He came out to vilify me, and he wanted to make light and bring it to everyone's attention that I walked down a public road in his district, and that was intimidating the people of his district, when yet what I did was I just had conversation with them, and one of my videos showed that. And then I walked up to Bobo's Chicken, and they recognized me from the street, and they called me over and invited me to come back when they were open, and they gave me some chicken.
There you go. That's awesome.
That's awesome.
Yeah, so, you know, Tim, I would have to say the politics being what it is, there's plenty of good Second Amendment supporter friends you've got there that happen to be of a darker shade of beige. That probably would be good optics in the future, don't you think?
Yes, I think so. And that's what, you know, a lot of people had criticized me for only walking in Edmond or Oklahoma City or the better parts of Tulsa, what they call better. I had just almost damn near been challenged to walk down 23rd Street, that I couldn't do it or wouldn't do it. What's wrong? Why won't you come to this side of town? So, you know, I decided to do that. After I completed my interview with Vice TV, with Vice Media, after they walked around with me for half the day, I went to 23rd Street, and we made a video there. There really wasn't any issue whatsoever, but it seems that the news wanted to make an issue that I had walked in front of a church and stopped to talk with the patrons of the church that they were standing out front.
Yeah, I mean, we've gone over a year now with this, what we call permitless carry, being in effect. And according to all the great prognosticators, there's supposed to be bloodletting in the street and mayhem and all kinds of civil unrest in Wild West in Oklahoma. What happened?
I think they were watching too many movies. That hasn't happened. I have not noticed it.
If not for David Holt locking down Oklahoma City for COVID, there probably would have been, right?
And GT. No, everybody's too sick to go.
Exercising mayoral powers. But back to this due process thing, because I want to know, is this the only way? We're arguing the mask mandate, and people are saying, take them to court. And we had this discussion. There's no way to fight the mask mandate until damages are incurred, and then you got due process to go through the retribution. So I mean, you've gone through a year of due process, I guess. I don't mean to pry. I don't want any details that aren't proper to share, but I mean, you've suffered loss. They took, I'm sure, property. And have you reclaimed your property? And then the time spent and the lost wages and pain and suffering and all the other stuff. I mean, how do you get repaid for this?
I guess it's going to have to occur through litigation. Maybe we're going to have a maps for Tim. That could be on the slate here in the future. But they did not seize my property because they, like I said, they had raided my house and couldn't find not even one firearm at the location. Okay. So they came up empty-handed with the actual airsoft gun that I may have been carrying at the restaurant. They couldn't prove I had a real gun, so all they had were pictures. So based on that alone, they didn't have a strong case.
Right.
I did lose my job at the Air Force Base.
Sure.
And that's also being.
I'm sorry, Tim. Talk about this. You did spend some time in the lockup there until they could restructure your bail, correct?
Yeah, that's correct. I had a $100,000 cash bond on a low-class felony that probably would have been a $2,500 bond at most. And they tried to keep me in jail because they wanted to silence me. They didn't like what I was doing. Some of my other videos just showed that you don't have to ID a cop to a police officer when he walks up and asks for your ID. Unless there's articulable suspicion of a crime, you don't have to ID. And some of the videos really made the Oklahoma City Police Department and other departments very upset because I was showing people how to exercise your rights lawfully. And they didn't like it because basically they feel if they ask you to do anything, you need to ask how high to jump when they tell you to.
Right.
You were also treading on their area of symbolism. You were literally symbolically exercising the rights for all of us. And in that area of symbolism, they want to rule. They're not going to let anybody else show a symbol of any freedom or self-sovereignty. And so they know by crushing you as best they can, they are dissuading 100 others from even thinking about trying.
That's the point right there that they were trying to make.
Yeah.
So since then, we have had several open carry walks on 23rd Street right in the middle of Jason Lowe's district. I didn't participate in them, but I watched the videos, and we've had that happen twice. And they probably weren't happy about that. Yes, we've had two of them on 23rd Street.
Tim, I got to say, I mean, some Saturday afternoons, I'll just get a bowl of popcorn and some tea, and I'll pull up some of your YouTube videos, and it's entertaining watching people's reactions, especially like when you're at the Capitol and the people are freaking out, the staffers that, well, you can't do video of me. But what I did like is I think you were in Blanchard. Now, I've had my problems with the Blanchard Police Department, not about me personally, but some of the ways they've abused people's rights. And the guys are nodding because it was part of our discussion on the show in the past. But you came into the police department, and I think it was the police chief says, "Hey, Tim, I watch your videos all the time." Right?
Yeah, exactly. That's right. I try, when I first got into auditing, one of the things you do is you go somewhere into a public building or restaurant or place, and you start videoing. Just pull your camera out and start videoing at the tax commission or at the education department or the transportation building or somewhere where they just don't get a lot of visitors, like unlike the Capitol where they're used to it. They'll approach you and tell you you can't film, put the camera away. They'll call the police on you. I've been attacked and arrested and assaulted for videoing at libraries and places like that, just common places. And they learned the hard way that running a camera or using your phone in public is not against the law.
Right.
And if the officers don't know that, they figure it out pretty quickly. And the patrons or the individuals that are trying to stop you from exercising your most basic right learn by the time you leave. Now, you got to stand your ground because they're going to come up to you. They're going to tell you they're going to arrest you. They're going to confiscate your property, and they may even do that, but you're going to win when you go to court. And we have seen, when I went into the municipal building at the sheriff's, where the sheriffs run security at the courthouse, the first time I went in there, they grabbed me and my buddy Patrick's phones from us. They told us we couldn't film. One of the deputies just basically almost tackled us and arrested us. Now you've got Jess Eddy and some of the other people walking right in there with their phones, not being hassled about it anymore, going right up to the DA's office and holding a sit-in, holding their cameras. They would not have been able to do that a year and a half ago if I hadn't gone in there and straightened them out.
Right. Now, it's not that the law has changed. It's that we're taking back our rights, right?
That's correct. We have always had a basic First Amendment right. Some of the equipment may have changed over the years. Now, so how long have cell phones been in rampant use? Maybe 10 years or so now. We've got YouTube. They're not used to the citizen journalist getting out there and filming things. What happened, what is the power, what they're scared of too is you're going to catch them doing something wrong, and they've started to realize that. What started this whole George Floyd thing in America?
Somebody
not what was going on with the police. Someone had a camera on them. That's what they are scared of.
Hey, if you're just joining us or still listening, you're watching once again 3D Politics Live. I'm your fine host, Tommy McKay, right here at Tommy McKay on Facebook and on Twitter. I've got with me David Van from SoonerPolitics.org and David Oldham from ConstitutionalGrounds.com. Tonight, Timothy Harper, our special guest in Blackout. We've got him hidden on Ninja Screen, audio only, so you can't recognize him.
There are Sasquatch sightings.
But there he is, withstanding the pressure from the government to exercise his rights for all of us. There he is, hidden in the dark.
Yeah, I'm driving down the road with the phone up to my ear, so I apologize for that. We're having difficulty with the video side.
Tim, let's plug your YouTube site. I think it's News Now OKC. Is that correct?
Okay, that was my channel, which was renamed Oklahoma Taxpayers Unite. They now have all my old videos because to get out of this, I had to relinquish some of my rights. And Oklahoma Taxpayers Unite has my old video channel, and you can go there and watch all the old videos. But my new one is called Timothy Harper. Just my name, Timothy Harper, and that's actually the first channel I ever had. It didn't have much of anything interesting on it. And then I created News Now OKC when I started to get into First Amendment auditing. But I had to relinquish that with an agreement with the DA months and months ago. This is some of the stuff that I had to compromise in my life to get the dismissal. I don't think I wanted to show to them that I wasn't active in auditing anymore. I was going to give it up and not do that stuff anymore because that's what they didn't like. They didn't like my YouTube channel that had more subscribers than the Daily Oklahoman. And whenever I went and did something, they were, everything I would do and put up on there got traction in the news or in the community. And
Tim,
they hated seeing me. Go ahead.
I'm a binge watcher. I'll tell you, and my favorite video of all of them is when you went to the state health department and you end up getting a security guard, a rent-a-cop, getting him fired because he had such a meltdown over your camera.
Yeah, that's correct. They can't handle it. We got arrested being a guy named Rick Hubbard. He has a channel I'd like to plug called Picture Perfect. Go to his channel, and he's got some great videos as well. He is just knocking it out of the park with a lot of his videos. We go, and I go up to there to back him up.
Good.
So he goes to the Tulsa Library, and he's videoing inside, and they kick him out. They push him out. They threaten to arrest him. So I come down to the Oklahoma Library, downtown OKC, And I go down there and I'm videoing inside, and I get assaulted and attacked by a ex-OKC security guard. He's still wearing the uniform. And he breaks my camera, tries to knock me down, tries to put my hands behind his back. Well, I know a security guard cannot arrest you.
Yeah.
So I resist it. I push him back, and I leave the building. Police get called. They determine that, we're in big trouble because this man was just standing there. I file a little suit with them and get my money for my camera. And then we go back up to Tulsa to try to enter that library and film. Me, Mr. Hubbard, Picture Perfect, and another individual. His channel's not now, maybe later on YouTube. And we go inside and we're videoing. And after about 30 minutes, we get ejected and we're out on the sidewalk for an hour filming. And we determined to leave because they won't let us film in this public building in Tulsa. And as we're walking about 3 blocks later, we get swarmed by about 7 police cars. They take us down, arrest us. I had a body cam on that they didn't shut off. It showed the whole ride to the jail. It showed us getting booked in. It showed us sitting there filling out paperwork. And what they did, they wanted our names. So what they did was a catch and release. They got us down to the jail, started to book us in. At that point, we identified. They went in a back room. They had a powwow. They came out and they released us. They gave us everything back and sent us on our way.
What was the charge? I've got to ask. What was the charge?
The probable cause.
They were going to charge us for trespassing outside of the library on public land filming. And we left the building.
Can't be.
It's a public place to be.
Yeah, exactly. and think about this,
They'll
Tim.
do it.
Think about this. Our public libraries are a temple to the First Amendment, freedom of the press, freedom of speech.
You think
freedom
so?
of the print. Yes. And here you are exercising it live, and they're the ones coming down on you.
So for the crowd,
it's insane.
For the crowd listening, the whole story was pitched as a Second Amendment story, Second Amendment auditor, and we've talked the last 10 minutes about First Amendment. And so I want to touch back on some of the criticism you've had, Timothy, about from the Oklahoma Second Amendment Association. This quote, his actions, talking about you, Mr. Harper, actions to draw attention to himself while escalating tensions for profit of a social media platform is uncalled for, unwise, and does not hold to the values of the board of directors of OK2A or the majority of Oklahomans. His claim to any such authority with OK2A is false. A statement from the association read in part. What are they talking about there, Tim Harper?
Well, I'm not bringing attention to myself so much as the injustices and the what's going on when you exercise your First and Second Amendment rights out in public. I mean, it's just not Oklahoma that I had problems with. Shamrock, Texas, I was filming a police stop there, and I damn near got put in jail for that. OK2A, I believe, felt that I was hurting the Second Amendment cause in Oklahoma, when in all actuality, what I'm trying to do is show people that you have these rights, and we need to exercise your Second Amendment rights and First Amendment rights in Oklahoma. I don't care if it's me or another person getting out there and showing this. Well, I guess I proved that we have some screwy laws in Oklahoma. There are a lot of places, when they passed constitutional carry, it was deemed that you can now do anything, go anywhere with your gun except for in the police station or municipal buildings. Well, I guess I showed that there's a little issue with that in a lot of restaurants or movie theaters or places like that. You know, we have businesses in the state that have alcohol licenses that charge you to go inside and use an offensive weapon. They have these weapons inside the building, and you're breaking the law. You're committing a felony. But nobody's looking at these axe throwing companies. They have a liquor license. You go in there and you touch one of those throwing axes, you have technically committed the same crime or broken the same statute that I did. But they're not going there and yes, it is the same thing. And in fact, one of the statutes mentions an offensive weapon as an axe. So we've spoken with some legislators, and we're trying to square that away this session.
Tom,
So,
I've got to include this. I'm doing a share screen right now. This took place down in Lawton, and it shows a man holding on a PVC pipe a Trump flag. And he is surrounded by several hundred Antifa and other protesters. And the lone man is Tim Harper. Now, let me tell you, one of the things that assured Tim Harper's safety, and he had, I mean, all kinds of thugs, they were crowding him, but Tim was packing heat. He had a sidearm. Tim, you want to talk about that?
Yeah, they were having a Kids in Cages rally down in Lawton. Lawton was considering holding some immigrant children, illegal alien children down there on the base. Well, 800 to 1,000 people showed up to protest that. And me and another individual who basically flew under the radar went there to video this event. And
yeah, our friend Adrian Otap.
Yep, he was there as well. And I was open carrying, and they clued in on me quickly. And I carried the large Trump flag. So
that
I
might have
brought the
been part of
attention to
it
myself.
too.
Yep. And my flag, I think, was taller than anybody else's. And I went down there to exercise my First Amendment right. And I knew Antifa and AIM and all these groups were going to be there. And it was one of the largest events I ever saw. And I was just constantly surrounded by these people. And one of them had a shirt that said "Punch a Nazi," and they were begging to assault me or take my flag.
He's
and
like about
nobody.
He was about a 320-pound man. We're looking at him. He's right up in your grill right now in this picture that I'm showing.
Yep, but they refused to touch me. They refused to enter my space and make contact with me. There was probably about 30 of them that were on me. Yes. And then when they stopped under the bridge, they tried to form a big line to keep me out. Well, I walked right up to them.
It was funny.
I'm not going to. It was one of the craziest events you've ever seen.
Absolutely.
And I stood up against a whole Antifa regiment, and they did nothing because I was armed. And the police were nowhere to be seen.
Oh yeah.
They backed out. They were gone. No state troopers. No nothing.
Nothing. Yeah. It's absolute cowards. The Lawton Police Department ought to be ashamed of themselves. How's that for my GT Bynum?
The Trump rally at Veterans Park a year ago. We experienced a year now, whatever it was, a year and a half ago. We experienced the same thing. We had the permit for the park. We were being disturbed, our peace, and the police just stood back and watched it. When we asked them later, they said, well, we weren't sure who was causing the trouble, so we just stayed up there. It's like, thanks.
Well, you're never going to find out who's causing the trouble when you stay up there. God.
Yeah. Well, they've got a tough decision to make. Do they intervene and squash somebody's First Amendment rights, or they stand back and let them exercise them to the fullest extent? It's a tough call. So, I can't fault them for that. They allowed those people to have their First Amendment rights.
Blocking a public street. Tim, blocking a public street is not a First Amendment right.
Well, and there's no reason.
Oh, they definitely did that.
Yeah,
there's no reason to have a permit if it doesn't. There's no reason. What's the permit for? If you can't use the.
I don't think they had a permit.
Well, I'm talking about our little deal where what I'm saying is please stand down when they want. But you had a much bigger issue. The good news for you is it's been dismissed. You're retaining most of your rights. It's unfortunate to hear that you had to. Give up, your life of crime, your desire, a lot of the things that you were having to, the platform that you wanted to speak out on apparently now is no longer available to you.
Yeah, we'll see. We'll see if I can't make some more videos in time. We'll be getting back into it. But, the day after I went into the restaurant and walked around Oklahoma City everywhere, I went into 4 other restaurants with no issue. And in fact, though, one of them, some patrons called the Oklahoma City police on me, and I was sitting there eating my food with Picture Perfect and News Now Yukon, who has a channel, David Luckett, and the police come in, and they stand behind me for about 2 minutes with my AK-47 slung across my back while I'm eating Chinese food. One of them's talking to the manager, and then he motions for them to leave, and they leave. The manager comes over, and he says, "Sir, I'm sorry about that. One of the patrons called the police. We didn't do it, and they apologized for it." Yep. So I had been to 4 restaurants before I was ever arrested at the Twin Peaks. And it didn't happen at Twin Peaks. Somebody took my picture, and then it started to to circulate through social media, and before you know it, the main news media gets a hold of the picture, which alerts the police department, and then they go and backwards start investigating, figure out who I am. We got to shut him down, and then they arrest me. And they also judge shopped to get a judge to sign off on the $100,000 cash unconstitutional bond. So
Right.
they did it with malice in their heart.
Yeah.
Well,
Prater. Yeah,
Let
go
me pursue this line of thought for a second, because the Eighth Amendment, as you well know by now, Tim, says that bond must, one, be reasonable, and that you are entitled to a speedy trial. Neither one of which happened. How did they end up at such a ridiculous bond? And how did it get drug out for a year before finally they just go, oops, I guess we're over a year, before they finally gave up on the whole thing?
Well, OCPD and some other activist groups in the area went to Prater and lobbied to put me under the jail because of my video content. They wanted that to stop, and they knew they couldn't make me stop without arresting me or putting me in jail. And so that's why I had the $100,000 bond. They wanted to use my video, me exercising my rights, to make you think that I'm a danger to society or was out to start a race war.
Yep.
And Prater believed them. This is one of the reasons it's dropped. It's one of the reasons it got dropped, because when Mr. Prater, and also another reason it took a year, was my first attorney did pretty much nothing. So I had to fire him and file an attorney named Tim McCoy here in Oklahoma City. Is the hardest working attorney I've ever seen. He wore out his shoes going back and forth talking to Prater to try to convince Prater that what he heard in the news and heard from the police department wasn't true. And when Mr. Prater started to open his eyes and see what was going on and comparing my life, my character, with what was being shown in the news and hearing what from OKCPD, he was, I'll put it a little bit mildly, he was mad. Because here I am, never been convicted, worked in federal service, worked in law enforcement, worked in jails. Here I am trying to exercise my rights and just have a YouTube channel, and being told that I was a racist and I was out looking for a gunfight.
Yeah.
True.
Well,
and then he realized that he had signed on to a $100,000 bond on someone that didn't deserve it.
Yeah. And this is why I've been harping about term limits for DAs, because DAs just become tainted by the world they live in. And they just start projecting those kind of evil and malicious character traits on everybody and anybody. And Prater's one of the worst ones. Prater's got to go. He just got to go.
Well, he does.
I don't think he's going to run for a next term. I think he's going to be done from what I've heard. He's going to retire from my understanding. But who knows? Mr. Prater, I think he's the only one that knows.
Maybe he'll be like our former DA and run for Congress.
Tim Harper, we appreciate you being on the show. Once again, where can we find out more information about you? Where are your videos being housed?
They're housed at Oklahoma Taxpayers Unite on YouTube. And you need to go back about a year for obvious reasons, and then you can start seeing my videos on my old channel. And, yeah, like you said, go grab a popcorn. And also a few videos. Officers give me no problems at all. I still posted those videos.
Right.
You know, no issue. It's still on there. But go watch the McLeod PD video. That one is one of my best ones. Yeah. The Tax Commission. Hafer Park is on there. It had over 1.5 million views.
Health Department.
What else? Health Department is a great one. The Health Department. There's just so many I can't. Shamrock, Texas. And I went there to see where the Hoonigan Mustang did all the driving in Shamrock, Texas. Ken Block, if you've ever watched Hoonigan, Gymkhana 7, watch those videos. I went there to see where this Mustang tore up that city and put black marks on the ground. So I was there and came across a police stop and started filming it. Well, they came and said they didn't recognize Oklahoma carry licenses in Texas. Boy, you better put that gun up. And that's the deputy saying that. He said he didn't recognize Oklahoma carry permits in Texas. So, there they are making up their own rules.
Yep.
We've got about 10 minutes left to get out of here. We've still got to work in this lawandcrime.com. Timothy Harper, I appreciate not only all the things you do for fighting for our rights, everyone's rights out there, auditing the exercise of your free First Amendment and Second Amendment. But thanks also for being on the show. We want to have you back again when we can actually see your face. Timothy Harper, thanks again for being on the show.
Thank you. Have a nice evening.
You bet. We're going to send him out.
Thank you, Tim.
Thank you, guys.
Once again, 3D Politics every Monday night with your fine host, Tommy McKay, right here, your verbal Viking, along with Soonerpolitics.org, David Van, and of course, constitutionalgrounds.com, David Oldham. Yes, sir, ladies and gentlemen, now lawandcrime.com is where this comes from.
Let me in, Tom.
Uh-oh, what happened? Oh, I don't know how that.
No, I had to let myself out to let Tim in.
We have to fix that.
All right, I'm coming in. That's awesome.
Okay. Lawandcrime.com. Alito demand, the headline, Alito demands briefs in Pennsylvania Congressman's lawsuit to flip the election. This is from Aaron Keller from December 5th. Supreme Court Justice Samuel Alito has asked Pennsylvania officials to file a response briefs in so far failed attempt by GOP Congressman Mike Kelly to flip Pennsylvania's 2020 election results. Now, this is a 3-page story, and I'm going to let these brilliant ones, David Van and David Oldham, all things Constitution, all things brilliant state information analysis. Tell us what's in this article, guys.
David,
well, in short, this is a lawsuit that's been brought by a Pennsylvania Republican congressman. He's a Trump
state
supporter.
rep, isn't it, or is it a congressman?
I'm sorry, a state representative. Excuse me.
Okay.
A state representative who he's a Trump supporter, and he thinks that the mass mail voting law violates the Pennsylvania Constitution. And so what he has done is he has petitioned to the state Supreme Court, who then turned down his petition based on the doctrine of laches, and it's spelled L-A-C-H-E-S. And laches means it's Latin for too late, so sorry, should have done it earlier. And so basically, they're saying he should have brought the suit before the election, not after, because it waited too long. But the problem is, it did get brought before the election, at least in part. Now, I see a couple of things wrong with his particular case, because there's two things that are actually at issue. Number one is whether or not the state constitution can override the U.S. Constitution's requirement that the state legislatures determine the manner of the choosing of electors, and that, given the 14th Amendment, which we'll get into here in just a second, must be an election, but the state legislature has the authority to determine the manner of the election. But that authority was breached before the election, and the Supreme Court said we're not going to stop the election in Pennsylvania or stop these rules that were created by the state Supreme Court and the governor, which allowed for a lot of the discrepancies. What I don't remember being discussed beforehand was this constitutional issue, and I don't know that anybody really thought of it. So they turned it down, and now it's before the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court.
David, I want to clarify something before you get too far removed from it. So they wanted to challenge this before the election, and the Supreme Court there in Pennsylvania fell back on, it's always their catch-all. Well, you cannot show that you suffered damages, therefore you don't have a case. We're throwing it out. So they literally said, well, you got to wait until you actually suffer because of this action. And then once they have the election, you suffer the action. They say, oh, now you're too late. You should have done it before the election.
I mean, suffering
that's what's going on.
Suffering the damages is exactly what we were talking about with Harper.
Well, here's the problem with a lot of these stare decisis doctrines, these judicial doctrines, is they ignore the Constitution. When the law is unconstitutional, to prevent damage, you must return it. They must hear before, because it's facially unconstitutional.
Yeah.
And the argument, this was and remains the argument as to why Pennsylvania's delegation must not be sat in the Electoral College, and that is because their election was fraudulent, was improper, illegal from the get-go. And this is because of the governors and Supreme Court's interference into the election process.
David, you said about stare decisis before you get too far away from it.
Right.
For those, that's again another Latin term or phrase, but it's not much different than the Catholic doctrine of the Pope being infallible. They essentially say that, well, whatever the Supreme Court has ruled is essentially unquestionable. So therefore, it becomes a kind of a godlike claim of we're always right. And how dare you question us?
Well, it is an oligarchical sovereign, as though they're sovereign over us and can tell us what the law actually says. And we have to get over that mindset to get
more than sovereign, omniscient.
What about
knowing everything?
Both.
Most people don't realize even the Supreme Court decision can be overturned, a la Dred Scott. So, at some point, it's back to public opinion once again.
Yeah,
correct.
Yeah.
One of the things that the people on our side, whether it be constitutional, the right, whatever, is we give up without pushing back sufficiently and get that change. I mean, we need to thumb our noses at people like G.T. Bynum, people in government who are violating our rights right and left. We need to thumb our noses at them, actually do civil disobedience, which is disobedience to a crime. It's not disobedience to law because they aren't acting lawfully.
Sure.
So, get back to what we're talking about. The problem that we have here with this whole thing is that Alito wanted all of the arguments in yesterday.
No, by tomorrow morning. Today still had today.
14. Oh, I'm sorry. Excuse me. It was by today. Was it by today or by tomorrow morning?
Tomorrow morning it has to be in the morning.
Because he has to actually they have to actually give a ruling by end of day, because Pennsylvania has a rule that all decisions must end 6 days prior to the seating of the Electoral College.
No, so, wasn't that the federal safe harbor thing that they're quoting?
Or it might be federal.
It is. It was a 1948 statute that says it. Okay. But again, it's a statute, and if it runs afoul of the Constitution, it's garbage.
Exactly. Now, the Supreme Court may decide that it runs afoul of the Constitution, but there is. Let me get back to my point. The arguments are in, decisions supposed to be made tomorrow according to statute, unless they determine that the statute is unconstitutional and they need more time. If they determine one way or the other, the Supreme Court says, no, we're not going to rule on it or whatever, we're going to stay out of it. Ultimately, the Congress can just refuse to accept the ballots from states that are acting improperly. So Congress ultimately can do that, and there is a process for doing that. It's in federal statute, and Mo Brooks, Representative Mo Brooks, has begun the process. Is looking for people in the Senate, because it requires at least one senator or one representative to object to any particular state electoral college slate. And so if they have a disagreement, and this has happened, by the way, this happened back in, I believe it was for Lincoln's second election. They had problems with the military vote, and they actually did not seat some states because the states had their vote so screwed up. Congress said, no, we're not seating you, and therefore they had to decide. They did decide in the electoral college, because he had enough to get the vote. But if they don't get to the 270 either side, then the vote will devolve to Congress. And so that really should happen in at least Michigan and Pennsylvania. Those elections were fraudulent, were improper from before the election. I say fraudulent, that's the wrong word. They were illegal from before the election because of the actions of non-legislators. Setting rules for the election.
Okay.
From the article about where you're talking, I think the thrust of Kelly's arguments is that a 2019 state election reform statute known as Act 77 violated both the state constitution and federal constitution. Act 77, which predates the coronavirus pandemic, was described when signed into law as a bipartisan compromise. It created a so-called no-excuse mail-in voting regime that Kelly claims violates a provision of the state constitution.
And in that, it didn't go to a vote of the people. When you're taking away or changing the people's right to vote, that matter in Pennsylvania's constitutional structure needed to go to a vote of the people, and they just decided, no, we don't want the people known. So yeah, you'll a lot of times get a bipartisan agreement to the legislature to cut the people out.
Sure, we're all in favor of leaving those guys.
Well, what it was, that it's a little confusing, and then the whole no excuse thing means that you could get an absentee ballot or a no for no reason whatever. Just, I want an absentee ballot. You don't have to provide a reason or anything like that. That's what they were doing. Saying that's too free. It violated the.
Well, no, wasn't this mail out? They just did mass mailings of people that didn't even ask for one.
Correct.
And so you got them sitting in mailboxes of people that, well, gosh, this is, address a person who moved out of here 10 years ago.
Well, and what are we hearing in the various hearings? If anybody's paid attention to the various legislative hearings around the country, in unison, we are seeing people from the various states all reporting that they showed up to a polling place and were told they had already voted.
Yeah.
And then they were given a provisional ballot. And if they were a Republican, then it was held off to the side. If they were a Democrat, it was put through a second time and without question. So, that weird stuff like that going on around the country.
From the article, it says Mike Kelly frames the argument this way. Number one, do the elections and electors clauses of the United States Constitution permit Pennsylvania to violate its state constitution's restrictions on its lawmaking power when enacting legislation for the conduct of federal elections? That's the question number one. And according to Mike Kelly, the second question is, do the First and 14th Amendments to the U.S. Constitution permit the dismissal of petitioners' claims with prejudice on the basis of laches, where doing so foreclosed any opportunity for petitioners to seek retrospective and prospective relief for ongoing constitutional violations? ? I understood the first one. What's the second one mean?
The latches, that's the "you're too late" argument.
Yeah, but we're doing so foreclosed any opportunity for petitioners to seek retrospective and prospective relief.
In other words, what they're asking the court to decide is whether or not the decision based on latches was actually valid or if it is invalid.
Well, yeah, but in layman's term, he said you had to catch 22. Says, well, you can't do it beforehand because there's no damages yet, but you can't do it afterwards because it's too late.
You show damages too late, but you got to be
so what they're saying is we want you to decide that we've been denied any redress, any ability.
Exactly. What this is demonstrating, folks, let's look big picture here, is that elections evidently are jungle rules now. Unless we can get some kind of court action, the message we're going to send is there is no fallout, especially on presidential, because let's say we find out in a year or two that there was this massively corrupt thing and the FBI orchestrated it with the CIA's help, and we got all kinds of operatives working, and then the president gets in and then he pardons every one of them.
Right.
See, this is a problem.
Let's understand these, although these happen have affected federal races, these are state crimes. Here in Oklahoma, every single solitary act that we are seeing of fraud or impropriety is a felony. A felony. So casting false votes and ballots and duplicates and all of that is a felony every single time, and so some of these people have racked up thousands of felonies by just shoving bad ballots into the machine.
I register dead people.
So
how many dead people? I mean, tens of thousands of dead people.
Yeah. Now, the big picture argument here really centers around the 14th Amendment, and I think Oldham's going to get into that, because what we've really got to do is hold these legislatures accountable for their not holding the state election agencies accountable.
Good luck. They don't even hold the senators accountable anymore.
Yeah. So and now Georgia could actually see some action, but you're watching some of the most weaselly Republicans I've ever seen hold a governor's office or secretary of state's office. It's pathetic in Georgia. And the people are mad. There's a revolt. Watch out. The Republican Party is going to have a bloodletting in Georgia over this. Saturday, the two senatorial candidates, because remember, in Georgia, they kind of do this thing where they have this runoff after the general election because they require a majority win. You cannot win with 47 versus 43%, and then the write-in ballots.
Well, with all of the actual inability to properly certify an election, because I believe everybody who's certifying these elections should end up in jail, because I mean the fraud that we've seen and the improprieties that we've seen automatically disqualify the election.
Okay,
but here's my point. I forgot my point. Anyway.
Okay, think about it. I was setting something up when you cut in. That what happened Saturday when Trump went down there and the huge crowd? This was not the crowd of a losing candidate. And when he invited those two senatorial candidates up to have the microphone, the crowd shut him out, drowned him out. Finally, David Perdue, who was the more prominent one, the senior statesman, he just gave the microphone back to Trump and went and sat down. I mean, they knew that they were not loved. They were not respected by the grassroots conservatives in Georgia. So watch that. That's a little subplot going on here.
Well, the question is who actually got the most votes? Because when you look at this whole thing, who got the most votes? can we trust the down ballots? Can we trust the Republican side?
Right.
The Democrats screw the Republican votes so that they could get it into a runoff and make it look okay, but get the good, the one that the Republicans all hate.
Right, because Purdue especially, he got 49 point something percent on the official tally. And if you throw out all those questionable ballots, he's probably in the mid 50s. So you would think,
or he's in the mid 30s, and the other candidate actually won. Who knows how they messed with it? Who knows?
Well,
how do we know?
Gentlemen, let's tell everybody what they're listening to. 3D Politics every Monday night, listening to the brilliance of David Vann from Soonerpolitics.org and the incredible intelligence of David Oldham from ConstitutionalGrounds.com. I'm your fine host, your verbal Viking right here, Tommy McKay at 3dpolitics.com and Tommy McKay at Facebook and Twitter and on SoundCloud, where you can listen to the most recent Alan Baines Johnston complaint, which I fixed that. But back to the article here from, this is from lawandcrime.com. And it says the Elections Clause of the United States Constitution is Article 1, Section 4, Clause 1. This clause basically says the state legislatures can set their own rules for elections, stating the times, places, and manner of holding elections for senators and representatives shall be prescribed in each state by the legislature thereof, but Congress may at any time make or alter such regulations. Repeating, Congress may at any time make or alter such regulations, except as to the place of choosing senators, which is old talk, because senators, again, are not controlled by the legislatures anymore. They have their own game they play and their own GoFundMe account.
17th Amendment,
what are we reading here?
I was going to actually pull up what you were just pointing out. Section 4, the times, places, and manner of holding elections for senators and representatives shall be prescribed in each state by the legislature thereof.
Yeah, we covered this last week.
We did. It's also, again, in Article 2.
Mm-hmm.
And then what we have is, because originally the electors are chosen by the legislatures in their own manner, it was not an election. It was not actually an election until the 14th Amendment, and then choosing electors was in the 14th
We'll clarify
Amendment.
It wasn't a popular election of the people. It was an election that was held within the legislature.
Often within the legislature, correct.
Yeah.
But it was open to every state legislature to decide
That's true.
how they're going to do it. And some states had it as a popular election.
And that brings up this point, David, is the legislators are still bound by what their own state constitution says regarding these electors or these elections.
Well, that is the question before the Supreme Court
on Pennsylvania. Yes.
In Pennsylvania with this particular lawsuit. And the reason is because of that section in the federal Constitution, Article 1, Section 4. Let's get back up here, Section 4, Clause 1, that it is given to the legislature. It's not given to the Constitution, because remember, and I come from California, and we saw this all the time in California, that the California legislature's hands were tied by the people directly describing things in the Constitution and going around the legislature.
The initiative petition.
Correct. Right. So what happens is that then takes it out of the hands of the legislature.
Yes.
It now is in the hands of the people, which is not the place that the Constitution puts it. It is not in the hands of the people. It is in the hands of the legislature. So the legislature sets the time, place, and manner, not the people through the Constitution. So therefore, and I the more I've thought about it, the more I agree with the argument. The Constitution cannot limit the state constitution cannot limit the legislature, because the legislature may need to do something that the Constitution
There's still going to be,
improperly resists that.
there's still good. Well, for instance, the state legislature is still bound by the 14th Amendment, the U.S. Constitution, equal protection. So they cannot set up an election.
The federal Constitution,
of the
correct.
federal Constitution, right?
So from the article, Pennsylvania's General Assembly exceeded its powers. This is Kelly's attorney wrote to Justice Alito, quote, Pennsylvania's General Assembly exceeded its powers by unconstitutionally allowing no excuse absentee voting, including for federal offices in the election. This opinion forecloses any means of remedying petitioners' injuries.
Yeah. Okay, so Oldham, what you're saying to us here is what may come out of this argument is that the Pennsylvania Constitution has a clause stricken that requires this Act 77 to go to a vote of the people, which is what evidently the Pennsylvania Constitution says. Things like that have to go to a vote of the people. And
Okay.
according to their state constitution. So that might get stricken down as, encroaching on the sovereign powers of the legislature in the presidential election.
And that is given, if the mind of the Supreme Court, which is a as Tom was pointing out, it's a movable thing, and that's the sick thing about the court having, being granted such power that its ideas can change with time, because now we don't have law, we have just how do they feel today. But
right.
but in 2000, Bush v. Gore, they basically stated as much as this, that the plenary power granted the state legislature by the U.S. Constitution cannot be overridden by the state constitution. That's the supremacy clause, Article 6 of the U.S. Constitution. It is supreme. State constitutions are under that, and the state or the U.S. Constitution gives all power for manner of elections to the legislature, not to the states in general, where it would be ruled by the state constitution. So to the legislature, of course, the legislature must act properly. That again goes back to the Bill of Rights and the 14th Amendment.
Okay, but this is, I think, what they're just, this is the argument from Kelly's attorney moves on with respect to elections for federal office. Both state legislatures and the Congress have specified roles inscribed in the Constitution as fail-safes for state failures in conducting elections. And so this is why we're seeing a redundancy, and that's why it becomes confusing, is because it's being circled back through legislature and Congress because the state has failed to provide a clear-cut election.
Correct.
Yeah.
Well, let me share with you what the various remedies are. Now, there are some novel remedies that are.
David, before you jumped off this point, I want to say this brings into question the wisdom of, I forget which early amendment to the Constitution it was, that moved our inauguration from basically first day of spring in mid-March up to January 20th, because now we create this legal bottleneck here that we got to resolve this thing in. And we would have had another 3-4 months.
Right. That's the 20th Amendment, which I put up on the screen there.
Okay.
Section 1 is where we moved to the 20th day of January. And yes, it does create a bottleneck. Originally, the date of the election was later as well, but the real thing is that there's, I don't know, I don't see the big problem with all these bottlenecks and things like that. I mean, they're making a big deal about the the transition and this and that and the other thing. I don't see that as such a problem. But speaking about the resolutions that are available, this is actually where I think this is going to go. Okay. The 14th Amendment, Section 2 says representatives shall be apportioned among the several states according to their respective numbers, counting the whole number of persons in each state. But when the right to vote at any election for the choice of electors for president and vice president of the United States, representatives in Congress, the executive and judicial officers of a state, or members of the legislature thereof is denied to any of the male inhabitants of such state being 21 years of age and citizens of the United States, or in any way abridged except for participation in rebellion or other crime, the basis of representation therein shall be reduced in the proportion which the number of such male citizens shall bear to the whole number of male citizens 21 years of age in such state. So here's the thought.
They lost me.
Okay, so what happens is that the concept was back in 1866 when this was proposed. Okay, yeah. What was happening is the southern states who were coming back into the Union were already denying blacks the right to vote based on race, based on any sort of thing. They wanted to make a racially based an amendment that prevented all of that behavior. But they realized that they would use some non-racial excuse to create these laws, as we saw ultimately with the poll tax and other kinds of things. So what they did was they left it open. So they said any male 21 years of age or older, okay? So long as he's a citizen of the United States. Now that by other amendments is now all people and 18 years of age, because those
by later amendments.
By later amendments, that's been reduced. So
women and 18-year-olds, yes.
So here's the question: how much has someone's right to vote been abridged? So how much fraud has taken place? And we put a number on it. Mm-hmm. That then their representation must be reduced by that number. Now, in Pennsylvania, it's everybody, because the election itself was illegal from the get-go, so there is no election. So therefore, there can be no electors sacked.
Okay, let me make sure I understand you, David, here. Yeah. You're saying that the language here in this section basically says they should not be seated, the electors, presidential electors from Pennsylvania, if in fact the election was improperly done in an egregious enough way.
And I would say that they have to throw out the entire election, down ballots, everything. Local, state, federal, the whole thing, because the entire election was.
Now, by taking in ballots, like for instance, that were shipped in on a pallet load out of New York the night of the election, things like that cannot be remedied simply by setting aside provisional ballots. You can remedy that within your state if those provisional ballots have been kept separate and challenged and then thrown out as needed. Then you still have a remedied fixed election. But Pennsylvania and some of these other states where you've got more people voting than are on the registration, right?
Correct. So what you end up with there is, again, you have a spoiled election.
Yeah.
I don't see how anybody can have that. Now, here it's saying that the basis of representation must be reduced. What you have to do is you have to show who is committing the fraud. Right now, it's all one direction.
Yeah.
If you can show that, then all of the people on the other side are being disenfranchised. Their votes have been reduced in value because of all of the fraudulent votes, which are only going the one direction. So that all those winners for that side get reduced. Okay.
Yeah, that's true if there was only one question on the ballot, and that being president. But because this is a multiple office,
it has to be election for everyone. Remember, this says president and vice president, electors for president and vice president, representatives in Congress, the executive and judicial officers of a state, members of the legislature thereof, all of those races, all of them. All of them must have their basis for representation reduced to the extent or in proportion to the numbers abridged to the numbers of the total of the state. So if you've got 50% of the people who are abridged, then your representation goes down 50%. Now who is to suffer here? It's supposed to be the side who is doing all of the aggrieving, who's doing the abridging. Right now, we only see one side doing the abridging, and they should be paying a political price in not getting their candidates sacked.
Oldham, I got to go back to, I'm trying to absorb what you just said. So you're saying Pennsylvania, I think they have 20 electoral college votes. So you're saying, what do you say, according to this remedy, would happen to those 20?
They would be reduced. They would either, well, and this gets into the question. They're to have their representation reduced as punishment for violating the rights of the citizenry, okay, and the certain citizenry. So they're to have their representation reduced. What that is the thought process is that's to get everybody mad and get everybody working on fixing this so it never happens again. Then they get their representation back. But in a pinch like we have for the electoral college, you just don't get sacked.
So no one gets seated is what you're saying would happen in the immediate sense.
Correct. And they should lose seats in Congress until they get it remedied.
Okay.
I'm going to stop your share there. Go ahead, guys.
Okay, so here's my next thing. Because any individual, can run, let's say, as a candidate in name, let's take Kanye West, for instance.
Sure.
What happens to him in this? How does he say, hey, it wasn't fair to me either? So you can't assign electoral presidential electors out of Pennsylvania as an adjudication to Trump, nor to Kanye West or anything else. You just simply don't seat them.
You have to not seat them because again, you don't have an election that was valid enough to be able to seat anybody.
Right. Okay. So that's the adjudication is simply Pennsylvania. You don't get to be part of the Republic's big decision here.
Correct. Correct.
Yeah, and that's your punishment. You get time out for 4 years.
And this should happen to all of the various states that have had such massive vote fraud. Congress can make that determination outside of any court. Courts do not decide these things.
Yeah,
Congress can ultimately decide it, and they have a process that is in federal code to go ahead and do that.
So you're saying if Congress then, when they meet in early January, decides not to seat several state electors,
not to accept the electoral college stat from their
okay. You said it differently, but we're basically talking about the same thing.
Yeah.
Just ignoring Pennsylvania. Now, keep in mind, the math on this is for Trump to turn this around, he needs 3 states. Okay.
Correct.
Not just one. So,
or to deny Biden.
Well, that's what I'm saying.
Ability to get to 270. No,
that's what I'm saying.
Nobody gets to 270, it goes to Congress.
Right. Okay. So that's the first hurdle. That's in a week. So folks, buckle your seat belts. We've got a week. Pay attention. By this time tomorrow night, when we meet, we're going to have big news for you on this. We need to get together and talk about it.
I also want to say, get out there on your social media, Facebook and Twitter, etc. Public opinion is critical. We need to show our faces, make sure that they know we're out here
Yeah. In fact, what you can do on that, I just got with Oklahoma's mayor, Brian Hobbs, been a guest on this show. You know, Brian.
Oh, yeah.
He's putting together a rally this Saturday at the state capitol, Stop the Steal rally. If you can be there this Saturday.
Time.
You look for social media to give you the details on the time.
Right.
So we've got that hurdle. And then there's going to be the pressure on Congress not to seat them or not recognize them. But
Correct.
David, what kind of vote is that going to be? Is that one vote per state?
What do you mean for the
On the seating? Remember, we talked about it
No,
last week.
the accepting the ballots or the electoral college votes from certain states, I believe happens. It may happen by house. I don't know. I haven't looked at the statute to see what it's going to be.
We better look into that one.
We're going to have
and
to
that's
look
something
into
we'll
it.
look at next week because it'll be more pertinent.
That will happen on January 6th, and it will happen as the president of the Senate goes down the list and starts counting.
Okay.
You're going to see a representative or a senator stand up and challenge the validity of those votes, and then we'll and again we'll have the information by then.
Yes.
But that's the last ditch effort on January 6th.
Okay. Now, if they're successful in keeping Biden from reaching 270, doesn't matter what Trump gets. Okay.
Correct.
Just keep Biden from getting 270. Even if you don't add another vote to Trump in the Electoral College, then it goes to a vote of the delegations in the House. Each state gets one vote, and it looks like I don't know if the Republicans picked up. Well, I know they didn't lose their majority. They might have picked up one. They were at
they haven't lost the majorities of within a majority of states.
Yeah,
so
that's
Republicans
the delegations to Congress
of seats in a majority of states, because
right.
again, they get their big groupings from these few states that have are overwhelmingly blue.
Yes, and for this purpose, Montana has as much power as California in that.
Oh, absolutely. So we have to get it to Congress. That's the point. Is to get it to Congress. That's our safety valve.
Okay.
Is if we can get the vote to Congress. So we all need to be looking at that. How do we get there? It would be nice if we could win it in the Electoral College. And there are some novel things about that they're saying that the state legislatures can always take back the ability to choose the electors themselves. And I don't see that given the 14th Amendment, but that seems to be a popular thought amongst the Supreme Court justices.
I seem to recall a lot arguing 20 years ago in the Bush v. Gore Florida thing that the courts the argument kept being made, you cannot change the electoral process once the election has begun. You can't make new rules the day after the election as to what satisfies as a ballot, acceptable ballot.
Well, and that's the point, and that's the problem with Pennsylvania. Although they did it beforehand, they changed the rules, and they weren't the legislature. So they changed the rules, and it was in the last minutes, the last couple of weeks.
Okay.
So
now, if we get past that second hurdle and all of a sudden there's a vote in the House by state delegations, you're going to see a bunch of Democrats going nuts and beating down the doors of the Supreme Court before January 20th. Wouldn't you agree?
Well, they won't have time. Yeah, it'll be on January 6th.
You got 2 weeks, and they're going to throw a hissy fit.
Well, yes, they will probably do that. But here's the problem. What will happen is if we get vote to devolve to Congress, as we've looked at before, the Constitution says that they must immediately vote, meaning that they don't get time to go through a court process or anything like that. They must immediately vote. Remember, it takes what's called a majority of the
Quorum.
a quorum to qualify as a quorum, they must have 2/3 of the states represented by at least one member of that state. And so that's all it takes. It does not take the Speaker of the House to do it, but the Democrats may want to sneak it in because they can get a majority of states if they sneak it in. The Republicans are going to be doing it. What you're going to see, the fireworks is going to be, how's our state going to vote when their states are somewhat split? And how they work that out, I don't know. I don't know the rules.
I tell you, if you see Nancy Pelosi leading a walkout in the House, you will see the greatest landslide officially ever, because 538 votes will all go for Trump. Well, no, except for those states.
50 votes. It'll be 50 votes.
Well, yeah, I'm sorry. Right. Yeah. But the equivalent of a 538.
Well, and remember, every single state has a Republican in it, generally. Almost every state.
I don't think Hawaii does.
There might be just a couple of exceptions.
No, actually,
California and New York all have Republicans.
No. You keep in mind, Vermont only has one state U.S. representative. Montana, Wyoming, they only have one. Now, Montana and Wyoming are Republican, but so there's going to be a few of them that will be a no-show.
Right. It's like WWE, guys. Hey, before we move on, there was Van, I'm going to reset. We also have some stuff to add towards the end of the show. We've flogged this story pretty well, but you were talking about Montana being weighted the same as California. A wise man once said, Joe Biden is to Kamala Harris what John Oates is to Daryl Hall.
Think about that.
Put that in your pipe and smoke it. But once again, you're listening to 3D Politics every Monday night, 7 p.m. and etc. with Tommy McKay, your fine host, along with David Van from SoonerPolitics.org and David Oldham from constitutionalgrounds.com. Van, you got some cards you're going to tell us about?
Hey, just want to let you guys know, Sooner Politics released the deck of playing cards, guys. These are the honor roll, the top 52 state lawmakers. And I tell you what, this guy right here, that is Terry O'Donnell. He is the #1 guy. And you know what else happened to him? He got elected by his Republican caucus to be the Speaker pro temp of the House. So congratulations to him. Couldn't go to a better guy, followed by Joe Newhouse and Adam Pugh, and even my friend Mark Allen.
Now,
but Nathan Dom, you're losing it. Nathan had this by a mile.
Hold it, David, you're moving too fast for some of the rookies out there. These people are on these cards because they've done a great job. Is that correct?
Yes, they voted to protect and restore our freedoms as our panel put together here. It's something we do every year now. And so next year I'll be going down to the Capitol, and I'm going to give each one of these 52 guys and gals their card as a commemoration of what we think they've been doing and where we think they can do better. Right, Oldham?
That's right.
Then we'll invoice them later.
Yeah, nobody scored perfect score on this, guys.
But, okay, so now back to the Nathan Dom thing. He's done well in the past on the cards, but he's
yeah.
What happened?
Oh, it's just there's some things that we had a truncated season. I know that this score isn't going to have the gravitas of, say, last year's.
It's like the Dodgers winning the World Series.
There you go.
It's a truncated season.
Even though I'm a Dodgers fan.
Yeah. So anyway, so we got that going on, and that's looking good. We got the rally this Saturday at the Capitol. Stop the Steal. Be there. Listen, the media's watching this. And Tom, you're absolutely right. We have to show popular support on this.
Yeah,
we have
popular opinion.
I mean, sometimes the mob gets their way.
So
and this is one of those times.
In that vein, one of the things I've found to be rather conniving and effective, I think, is I will go to Twitter and I will go down where Twitter always puts all the good comments. I will say, the most reasonable comments are filtered out, And so I go down and I find a reasonable comment and I will take a screenshot of it and post it to Facebook. And then I'll do the same thing from something on Facebook and post a picture of it on
Yes.
Twitter, or I will go down to the truncated replies that they don't like and have suppressed and take a picture of that and retweet it to the same
you go.
feed up above, just to continue the cycle of bullcrap. But I have found that it's become self-referential in the argument, because these drones, these sheep, these clowns, they have zero. We talked about it last week. No, I'm not talking about force. Yank their licenses. You know, it's like they have zero maneuver. They don't have any game. And I find myself just being able to repeat the great argument I came up with last time, because they're sheep. They continue to say the same thing about the mask mandate, and they say it's science, and that fails away in the first three arguments, and then they say we're just a selfish person. I'm like, well, okay.
Yeah. Tom, I got an epiphany I want to tell you about.
Okay, let's hear it.
Well, you know, I was talking the other night. I finished up my holiday lighting season. Those of you who know me well know that's what I do a third of my year. And this doctor that I was doing, we got to talking. He was outside. You know, he's an emergency room doctor. He's treated people with COVID. I mean, just, my God, the guy's working crazy hours. So we get to talking. And you know how they told us back last February, March, don't wear a mask. A mask doesn't do anything. It's a joke. Just don't wear a mask. Until all of a sudden they said, well, a mask, it doesn't help you, but it'll help the next guy. So yeah, now you got to wear a mask, right? So the science changed, Tom.
I know.
And now they said it this fall. They said, you know what? Now we're finding out the mask actually help you some. So the science just changed again. They didn't develop a new mask. They developed a new science, a new truth. So here's my point.
Yes, sir.
I believe we should trust in superstition more than we should trust in science, because science changes all the time. Superstition.
Well, wait a minute. Their science is superstition. So how does that work?
You got me. You got me. You trumped my epiphany. Yep. So you see, it's really no difference, right?
Your humor also is funny, because it has a truth within it, and the fact is that as they try to control us with health science,
of course,
health science, they'll be the first to admit health science changes all the time. That's why we shouldn't use health sciences to control the political schemes. We should use political science to run our politics, not medical science to run our politics, because, Dr. Dart, medical science changes all the time. Political science, human behavior never changes. And always use political science to gauge your politics, not medical science.
I mean, think of it. If you can get all the doctors to get an exclusive that you can say, okay, these medicines can only be sold when a doctor approves it. So now, in order for people to get those pharmaceuticals, they got to go to you, to doctors. So what's a doctor going to say? Forget all the homeopathic stuff. You got to use real medicine, which is approved by the FDA, because that's real science. And you got to come to me in order to get permission to get it. It's a scam, right?
Of course it is.
It's
and remember, it's just one philosophy for healthcare, and there are other philosophies. And because I subscribe to that philosophy, therefore, why am I being discriminated against when I am not violating anybody's rights?
Yeah, it's your body.
It comes down to a philosophical a discrimination based on philosophy, which is religion.
Yeah.
They have set up a state-sponsored religion called allopathy, and we're going to put all our trust in masks and you know what they call
oracle of nurses, so that they'll all tell us what is safe, and we're relegating freedom below safety. And,
so that's why I say all of my opinions here are data-driven and science-based. Thank you.
Right. No kidding.
So, I believe they are.
Yeah. So, you know, this is just getting to be ridiculousness. You know.
But if we don't put
8 months.
Well, I mean, 15 days to flatten the curve, right?
Yeah. So, you know, I mean, it's just they've been toying with us, and I think what's happening now is inevitable, folks. We are getting a lot of sicknesses right now.
Dr.
Okay.
Dart was saying on the, I heard him quoted on the radio, an audio soundbite from him talking about the situation. And then he made the phrase, and then he says, and then we get back to whatever we decide is the new normal.
I caught that.
Now, see,
Yes.
the problem
Really?
here is they game the wordplay, and they said he says the words whatever we decide, and most people who listen think that means me and you and everybody who's listening, but we are going to decide. No, we have just seen what they've done for the last 15 or since the pandemic. All they do is ration. They set up a class system where healthcare people are more important than other people who are less essential. And who's going to get the drugs when they come in? The more important people. We live in a caste system now.
Yeah.
And
so get this. I heard on the news this weekend, it's going to be next summer before the general public can on demand get any of the vaccines if they want them.
So see, when Dr. Dart says whatever the new normal we decide, that is what they call a damned lie. It'll be whatever he decides. Because as we know, GT, Greg Robinson, Bynum, does anything that, according to Bynum himself, we have done everything the health department has told us to do.
Yeah.
Well, Dart speaks in the royal we, and also in the he and his team, his health department team,
and that's
all
just
of whom are unelected bureaucrats.
They are the ones who get to decide now who's worthy of receiving a vaccine sooner and who doesn't get it.
And if you make the case, despite their lack of seeing the evidence, that this is a global push to create control of individuals over the entire globe.
Yeah.
Hitler now has his computer. They're tracking every single all over the globe. Now, the people will say, what are you, conspiracy theorists? You think people are out for world domination? Only Hitler, only the Soviets, only the Chinese, only every other person, including Pinky and the Brain.
Yeah.
Everybody, this idea that people are not trying to control and have a dominion over the world you are literally not seeing the reality before your face. Now, when Hitler tried to take over the world, who stopped him? Essentially, America came in and saved the day in World War II. What people in America who are fighting in favor of the mask mandate don't understand is that this is a global fight against individuals. This is governments controlling individuals globally. And if they conquer America with 80 million people wanting the mask and wanting a nanny state, there will be no country to save us from that world domination.
Well, and let's also note this. I was speaking to a lady who has dual citizenship. She's Maltese as dual citizenship, and so she's part of the EU, and she pays attention to EU news and things like that. And she was saying that the Europeans are praying that we will stand strong here in the United States and hold on to our liberties. Because if we do not, where are they? They already don't have what we have.
Right.
And if we lose them, they've got nothing. They're screwed up
That is
every
good.
which way from Sunday. And that's the problem. And
It's
so
exactly the reason why Nigel Farage has taken such great interest in our elections the last 2 cycles.
Exactly.
He knows. By the way, I've got an honest to goodness commendation for Nancy Pelosi and the Democrats in the House of Representatives this week.
All right, what is it?
This weekend, Oldham, you think I'm going to say something funny. It's
I did.
not.
I did.
Okay. This last weekend, they voted and passed a bill to decriminalize marijuana. Bynum. How about that?
About time.
Isn't that a latch?
Okay.
Yeah.
So was it just
too late, isn't it?
decriminalizing? Was it decriminalizing it?
Decriminalize was the term I heard in the
Okay.
news media report.
I will have to look it up. Do you know?
Yeah.
Do you know the Senate, the House bill number?
I don't know it. I just heard it in passing. I didn't even stop to say, but I heard a couple of news reports on it. I think there were 5 Republicans voted for it. You know,
Really?
yeah. So we need to look at that because, folks, this is a liberty issue. Okay. There are some times, and Oldham and I have done this at the Capitol. The Democrats pull us in the room and say, "You got to help us stop it." And we look at you. Yes, we're on board with you. We're going to help you kill this thing.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, they're doing it for all the wrong reasons.
I even gave GT. I even gave GT kudos for handling the first portion of that Black Lives Matter thing. There's one show where I thought he handled the meeting at the city properly. I gave him. We're all about finding truth around here. Anything else before we get out of here, gentlemen?
No,
I think we've beaten this one to death.
Yeah. And you guys did a great job on that Alito story in the Pennsylvania. It's very tricky to figure out that stuff because there's a lot of business going on there.
And I'm serious, Tom.
Yes, sir.
I need nominations for Citizen of the Year, Sooner Politics.
Nominations for Citizens of the Year.
You know how to get a hold of me, social media.
There you go. That's David Van from SoonerPolitics.org. And of course, with us every week, right after the weekend, David Oldham, ConstitutionalGals.com. And I am your fine verbal Viking, your perspicuous plunder of conversation, Tommy McKay, at Tommy McKay on Facebook and Twitter, and at Tommy McKay on SoundCloud. We're going to take you guys out one at a time. Oldham, thanks for being here.
He was not to be argued with, David Oldham.
And there it goes, David Van. Thank you, Van. And there goes Tommy McKay.